Hello everyone. So on this video I will give you an introduction to the macroeconomics course, and we will focus on gross domestic product, or it's abbreviated as GDP, and it's basically a measure of total production. Okay, so in our course we are focusing on the economy as a whole. So if you recall, economics as a field is divided into the microeconomics and the macroeconomics. The microeconomics is focusing on the behavior of consumers and the firms, right? And how they make choices, right? And how the government is affecting these choices. Okay, so this is the micro, but in the macro we focus on the economy as a whole. So you study the factors that affect many markets at the same time. So some of the important issues in macroeconomics is like when we talk about, for example, business cycle. So business cycle is one of the important topics. Let's say in macroeconomics, we talk about how the economy is moving between expansions and recessions. And you talk about, for example, employment or unemployment, right? How this employment is a function or is determined by the business cycle. So this was abbreviated, business cycle is abbreviated as BC. So how when the economy is doing good, it's affecting employment or is increasing employment, or how when the economy is not doing good or facing a recession, then employment falls. So we talk about employment, for example, and the factors affecting it, let's say the business cycle in the short run, because the business cycle is a short-run phenomena. You go up and down in terms of GDP production, and usually the cycle takes about 2 or 3 years, right? Somewhere like around 5 years. So we consider 5 years in macro as our short run. However, also we are affected by other long-term factors. Okay. We also gonna talk about inflation, which is the increase in the price level and how it's affected or how it's a function of, again, a business cycle, which is a short-run uh, effect, and also other long-run factors. Okay, so we will be talking about like business cycles, employment, inflation. We talk also about economic growth, how economic growth in some countries in Africa, for example, are different from economic growth in some countries in Europe or in the US or in the Canada or and so on. So we'll talk about the definition of economic growth in different countries and how they are affected by different economic or non-economic factors. Okay, so to make our analysis clear, we will talk about something called the circular flow. Okay, so what is the circular flow of income? Circular flow of income, as the name suggests, is how money is flowing, right, between different agents. So if we assume that we have a group of people and those are called households, HH, households, and those group of people are interacting with a market for goods and services, and we call it the businesses or the firms. And also we have another agent, which is the government, right? So this is how it goes. You basically supply your services to the firm, like you go and work, and you get dollars or income in return, right? So if I divide those households into workers, like labor, you have capital, like buildings, machines, and equipments. You have natural resources, and also you have those people who come up with ideas, and we call them entrepreneurs. Okay, so we can think of households as 1, 2, 3, and 4 different types of people. So when you go here and you supply your service, right? So you get like another flow of income in return, right? So you get like payments. So you get payments, and these payments are wages for labor. You get interest if you are renting, let's say, your building to the businesses, or you get rent if you have natural resources like a piece of land or something, and then you get profit if you are, let's say, a business owner or something like that. Okay, so this is a flow of dollars. You get this dollar and you also spend it to firms, so you buy or you spend, what do you call it, expenditure on goods and services, right? So you pay on goods and services. So you receive dollars and you return back dollars. But you also pay taxes to the government, right? And also businesses, they do pay taxes to the government. So the money is still flowing, right? And you also, as a government, you can have people coming from the household, whether those people are labor, capital, natural resources, or entrepreneurs. You have to pay them back. So you pay for them the payments in, again, wages. You pay for them, again, interest. You pay for them rent. You pay for them profit, right? So again, this is flowing from the government to households. And the government also is spending on goods and services from the firms. So the government also is spending and it's paying back to the firms the dollars, the dollar value of the goods and services. Okay, so the money is flowing between these three agents. So this is kind of a very, very simple circular flow, but we can also add to it another piece here, and we call it the rest of the world. Okay, so other countries. And what we do here is that we also spend our money on the goods that are coming from other countries, and we call it our imports. So I can spend my money on imports, right? And those people who are in the other countries, they also buy our goods and services, and let's say they are getting these from our businesses, like our local firms, and these are the spending on exports, right? So we call this exports because we are exporting these goods outside of, let's say, the US. We can also have another agent here, and we call it financial system. So the financial system includes like banks, insurance companies, mutual funds, stock markets, and so on. So as a household, you can put your savings here. So you are a supplier of money, right? And we call it savings. And as a financial system or as a bank, for example, you can use it or invest it by borrowing to, like providing borrowings to firms. So we call this borrowings. Okay, so the money is flowing, right? Every arrow that you see here is dollars. So this is dollars, taxes in dollars, you get payments in dollars, you spend in dollars. The households are spending on goods and services in dollars, spending on exports in dollars, and then I'm paying for the imports in dollars. So this is like the circular flow of income or money. Okay, how the money is flowing between the different agents that we have in the economy. And again, of course, this is kind of a very, very simple economy where I do have just like households, government, firms, financial system, rest of the world. But if you want to think about it in a more detail, it would get like more and more complicated. Okay. So in this course, we will talk about the spending, right, of different people in the economy. You can think of it as the components of the gross domestic product. So I can say, for example, that we have basically 4 categories. We have GDP, or you can, from now on, I'm gonna have like Y as a GDP notation. So Y is, or GDP is divided into consumption expenditure, we have investment expenditure, we have government spending, we have net exports. And net exports here is exports minus imports. So this one is, let me start with this one, is a notation for GDP. This is a notation for consumption spending. This is a notation for investment spending. This is a notation for government spending. And this is a notation for exports, imports. And exports spending or import spending by us, people living, let's say, in the US, and export spending by foreigners on our goods. Okay, so these are actually the 4 different components of spending. And actually the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the BEA, which is the Bureau of Economic Analysis, divides its statistics on GDP into these 4 categories. And these are called 4 categories of expenditure, right? How you spend your money as one of the individuals living in this economy, or as one of the agents on our circular flow. So what we will do next is we will be talking about each and every component, okay? And before I do that, which are the components, I'm going to talk first about GDP. So the GDP itself, which is the gross domestic product, it's a market value, right? So it's in dollars. So it's the market value of all final goods and services produced in a country during a period of time, and this period of time is typically 1 year, usually like 1 year. Okay, and it's actually computed by the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the BEA, which is related to the Ministry of Commerce, USA, and they do compute this data every 3 months. Okay, but not each country has this 3 months computation, so we say it's usually 1 year. So there are important points to notice in this definition. I want you to notice that it's market value, right? It's final goods, so it's not used, it's not intermediate goods. These are produced inside the country in a specific period of time. Okay, so just notice that each and every word is important and you cannot miss any of these words. So why market value is important? Market value, like in microeconomics, we measure production in units. So if you have taken, let me go back here, if you are talking about micro, or if you have taken a course in micro, and we're making choices whether I'm consumer, how much to consume, or producer, how much to produce, we're all the time talking in units. Okay, but in macro, we're talking in dollars, in value. So make sure when you switch between micro and macro, here we're talking about quantity, here we talk about value. So here I'm talking about market value because I want to make sure that you understand that it's different. When I talk about the whole economy, it has to be in value or in dollar term, or whatever is your currency that you want to use, but let's say dollars or US dollars. When I talk about final goods and services, I have to make sure that it's a good or service produced by a final user. We don't include any intermediate goods, so no intermediate, right? So if I'm talking about a table, I'm just talking about the value of the table. I'm not including the value of the table and the value of the wood used, and I'm not including the value of the nails used, and I'm not using, like I'm just talking about table, because table is the final value or the final product. I'm not talking about any intermediate product used to make this table. So I'm just talking about the final result, if you want to think about it this way. Okay, so it's not an intermediate good, which is a good or service that is an input. This one is an input into another good or service, right? So when you talk about the tires of a truck, so tires are intermediate, but the truck is the final. So here I'm including only truck's value or values, but I'm not talking about the tires values, okay? Make sure also that you talk about like a product that is produced inside the country. Okay, so it's not, I'm talking about anything that is inside the borders of USA, for example. I'm not talking about anything else that is produced outside. So gross domestic product is only related to the goods and services produced inside the US. That's why it's called domestic. I really don't care who produced this good. Like, I don't care whether the person produced this good is Japanese or Taiwanese or Egyptian or whatever. I really care about that this good is produced inside the borders of the US. Okay? And then during a specific period of time, so I have to decide exactly what is my period of time that I am considering. Okay, so let me stop here and then I'll continue in the next video.